At that point, he'll take a few questions. We're going to be discussing particularly some issues related to this airport. A lot of the basic facts of the incident you guys have already been reporting, so we're not going to get into a lot of that detail at this point in time. But at this time, Randall, if you're ready, if you can come up.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming out at short notice. Wanted to have an opportunity to discuss with you the North Las Vegas airport specifically and airport system generally. First off, before I begin those remarks, I would like to, of course, express sympathy towards all the family and friends and relatives of those who were killed and injured in this accident this morning, both those on the ground and the pilot himself. Want to especially thank the North Las Vegas Fire Department and all the emergency responders for the excellent, quick, and professional response that they provided to this incident, which once again shows what great first responders we have in this valley. Let's talk a little bit about the airport itself and the role of the airport in aviation. As you're probably aware, airport operators provide the basic infrastructure for airplanes to be able to land and take off in a community. And that's the same here at North Las Vegas. As an airport operator, we provide that basic infrastructure. The thing that we do not provide is, and do not have any oversight, is in the certification of airplanes, pilots, the training of pilots, or the control of airspace once the aircraft leaves the airport. That is under the purview of the Federal Aviation Administration. So we cannot direct any of those issues. Now, in Clark County, we have an aviation system. Most of you are aware that we own multiple airports. We have McCarran International Airport, North Las Vegas Airport, Henderson Airport, Gene Sports Aviation Facility, and the Overton Airport. One of the things that we cannot do by federal regulation is we cannot direct which aircraft go to which airports. I think that is something that needs to be addressed. Both from a safety and an efficiency standpoint at airports. In this case, we had an experimental aircraft with 5 hours of operations. This was the first takeoff from this airport. Its previous activity had been at other airports, I think Boulder City and the Gene Airport. As an aviation director, if I had the ability, I would manage the aviation system that we have to provide access to this community to all types of aircraft in the most efficient and safe manner. That is not under our control. I do not believe, under our circumstance, that experimental aircraft and high-risk aircraft operations such as training and solo flights belong in an urban airport. They belong at a rural airport like Gene, which we have. But we cannot, as airport directors, take any actions to balance those high-risk operations with a high urban area such as we have in North Las Vegas or at McCarran or at Henderson. You'll also see at Henderson, at McCarran, for example, you'll see single-engine Cessnas mixing with very heavy aircraft coming into the airport. We have no ability to direct those aircraft to more appropriate airports such as North Las Vegas or Henderson. In fact, I just received a response from the Department of Transportation, Federal Department of Transportation, last week on an inquiry that we had dealing with efficiency, not with safety, but the principles are the same, where we asked if we would have the ability to direct A and B aircraft, which are the smaller, slower aircraft, to North Las Vegas and Henderson and preclude them from coming to McCarran for efficiency purposes. We were told in our response last week from the Department of Transportation that federal regulation precludes airport operators from making those kinds of decisions. I think that this regulatory process on airport systems needs to be revisited. In the coming weeks, I am going to ask to meet with members of our congressional delegation to see if there's something that can be done on a statutory basis in Congress to revisit some of these longstanding federal regulations that don't allow us to manage our airport system in the most safe and efficient way that we think they should be managed. We should manage these operations for the benefit of everybody and not necessarily for the benefit of the pilots, which I think is the way the regulations are slanted. today. You'll look at North Las Vegas itself. It's been reported that North Las Vegas has had a number of incursions over the last several years. The airport itself provides the infrastructure, and we have looked at all of the issues that we have at North Las Vegas to be able to address those issues. I can tell you there's nothing that we're aware of that could be done in an infrastructure basis or an operation basis from the airport standpoint that hasn't been done. From painting wider stop lines at the taxiways to putting in what we call wigwags, which are flashing alternating lights to catch the pilot's attention, to burying underground power lines, to covering ditches because we had one or two pilots who couldn't follow the signs and fell into the ditch. So we've done a lot of things and spent a lot of money to address the safety issue. What we cannot address is pilot error. And if you look at almost every incident that has happened at North Las Vegas, it has either been pilot error or mechanical error, and mostly pilot error. And one of the things that I would like the FAA to address, and I think all of us should ask for the information as to what disciplinary action has the FAA taken against these pilots as they make these mistakes that create these safety problems. We have not received any information from the Federal Aviation Administration as to what action they have taken to discipline pilots that create these safety problems. And some of you have been around a long time, and some of you have reported on these incidents before, and you can certainly go to the NSTB reports that happen after an accident, and if you read those, you will find in the vast majority of the cases it has been pilot error. That has nothing to do with the safe and efficient operation of an airport. That has to do with other issues which are regulated by the federal government. So those are the issues that I wanted to bring up in terms of our view of what could be done to minimize the risk of aircraft operations in an urban area. Obviously, there are no guarantees. There's always risk. There's no guarantee that I walk out of a fast food place and stand on the corner, I'm not going to get hit by an errant driver and get injured either. But what we ought to do is to try to minimize the risks and take the higher risk operations which create the highest probability of a problem and move them to an area where they have the least impact. And we have a system that we could do that, but we are not allowed to do that under the regulatory process. Anyway, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have regarding the airport and the points that I brought up this morning.
Limiting the type of aircraft or whatever kind of activity you have out here seems to be a reversal of the way you've approached this in the past. Why now?
Well, it's not really. This is an issue that we have addressed informally for both efficiency and safety for a long time, not only myself, but the airport industry. Many of you may not be aware, but I'm the chairman of the Airport Council International, the trade association this year for airports. That's an issue we brought up to the Federal Aviation Administration on more than one occasion, is why can't we manage our airports as systems so that we can provide the most safe and the most efficient operation in our communities. But that is not something that's real popular with the pilots groups, AOPA, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. Will not be in favor, I think, of any kind of regulatory change to that regard. But I think the gravity of this situation calls for this to be discussed openly in the public and not within the circles that we travel in aviation. I think that's the difference.
And you touched on, you said that you want to try and get these experimental planes or people that are training for solo flights out of the urban area. So that this pilot today, most of his flights are out of Boulder City or Henderson. Do you know if you said today was his first flight out here?
The first flight for this aircraft out of this aircraft. Yeah, I'm not aware of the pilot himself, but the aircraft.
Is it a training flight for him, do you know, or not?
I don't believe so. I think we don't know all the answers to why this pilot was flying this aircraft. Obviously, the owner of the aircraft was not flying the aircraft. And hopefully we can find out why they were taking off from this airport at this time with only 5 hours experience on the aircraft, why this pilot was flying the aircraft instead of the owner. Those are all questions that we don't have answers to, and hopefully we'll get answers. That's really the purview of the Federal Aviation Administration. When the NSTB comes in, I'm sure they'll ask all those questions. Unfortunately, we usually don't get the report from the NSTB till 12 or 18 months after the incident, so that gets pretty stale at that point in time. But that notwithstanding, those answers to those particular questions, I think the issue is appropriate in terms of experimental aircraft, inexperienced pilots, pilots that are soloing for the first time after their training. You really got to ask yourself, do those kind of operations belong in a dense urban area when you have the opportunity, particularly in our case, where we have another airport where they could be efficiently operated and any risk factors would be greatly minimized by moving those kind of operations. That's the issue that I really wanted to address. But those other questions are important. We'll get those as soon as we can.
Was it the aircraft that only had 5 hours
Correct.
flying, not the pilots?
Correct, the aircraft. So that's not a lot of opportunity to understand on an experimental aircraft, I believe, what its capabilities and what its response is going to be.
They don't have like a flight planner or any of that stuff, did you say, where they fly it?
They never do that with the airport. That's not our purview. All of that is done with the Federal Aviation Administration. All regulation of flight is done by the federal government. All we do is provide the infrastructure for aircraft to operate. In fact, once we open the runways and turn them over to the Federal Aviation Administration to manage, we don't even manage who gets out on the runways. That's done by the Air Traffic Control Tower, which is a federal responsibility, and those are federal employees. And they do an excellent job. The ones in the tower aren't the ones that have decided the regulatory process of who gets to come to airports and who does not. That's a Washington issue.
Was there communication between the pilot and the tower in this case?
From my reports, I believe there was communication when there started to be problems, but I'm not, like I said, we will defer to the Federal Aviation Administration all specific questions about the flight activity itself. What I wanted to address to you this morning is the issue that I have in terms of trying to balance the importance of aviation to the community, the importance of having airports, but trying to balance that risk with the community. And this is an issue that I can tell you that certainly Doug, our airport manager here, understands, because I've had these conversations with him in the past. These are issues that we have talked about internally within our trade association, and certainly talked about to the Federal Aviation Administration at the Washington level. But currently the regulatory structure does not allow us to do anything about it.
So then should the people who live around the airport be worried, looking up all the time, given the current situation?
Well,
County Aviation, that again was Clark County Aviation Director Randy Walker live this morning at the North Las Vegas Airport. Again, 3 people are dead after a plane crashed into a house in North Las Vegas early this morning. The crash happened at 6:30 this morning. For continuing coverage, watch Channel 8 Eyewitness News at noon and stay tuned to continuing coverage on Las Vegas 1 Cox Cable Channel 19. And good morning. You are watching live Las Vegas 1 coverage of the plane crash news conference this morning at the North Las Vegas Airport. That crash happened around 6:30 this morning. An experimental aircraft was taking off from the North Las Vegas Airport when apparently something tragically went wrong. It crashed into a home near the airport there. 3 people are dead. The identities of the victims have not been released at this point. I believe we're going to go back to the North Las Vegas Airport right now. We have the...
Well, I'm not sure anything.
This is Aviation Director Randy Walker talking about what happened this morning and what he feels should be happening in response.
My opinions, and we'll see what happens.
You've been doing that for some time.
We've been doing it informally. This is the first time publicly that I have ever expressed my opinion that we should have this authority as airport operators. So that's what's different today. As I'm expressing it publicly to you, you can get it out to the public, and we'll see what the response is.
This has to come federally from the FAA to give you permission to decide which aircraft can come and go, so you can move them to the rural areas.
I believe this would actually take congressional action. I think the federal regulations that have been promulgated in this arena, in this area, actually are based on federal law. And so I believe that the FAA would tell you that they would need congressional action in terms of changing the laws that regulate the FAA for them to feel like they have the authority to change these regulations.
And you said you'd be meeting with Congress. Do you actually have something scheduled?
No. What I said is in the next several weeks, I'm going to try to set up meetings with our congressional delegation, our 5 members of Congress, to talk to them about this issue and to see what could be done on a congressional basis to address this issue.
Can I ask the Department about
Absolutely.
challenges with the plane, or was it loaded with fuel? Were there challenges fighting this fire?
Yes, the plane had just recently taken off, so it probably had a pretty good load of fuel on board. It carries about 75 gallons of fuel. So that does exacerbate our fire problem.
Bring Randall back up, question one.
Okay.
Assuming that you were able to push experimental aircraft out to rural areas, is the hope that instead of crashing into a house, it lands in a field, has a place to land? Tell us about that.
Well, certainly if you're in a rural area and you have a problem such as we did today, and the plane does crash, the probability that anybody other than the people on the plane, in this case the pilot, are going to be impacted is pretty low. Whereas in an urban area where you have a lot of dense development, the probability that you're going to have an issue other than the people on the plane is much higher. So my whole point is that you want to do a risk analysis and you want to establish your operations and your regulatory process such that you reduce the risk. You know, let's be honest, you're never going to eliminate risk. I mean, we have risk every morning when we leave our house on certain things. We can't eliminate it, but we can reduce it, and we should do that. We should look at those higher risk elements of our operation, and we should try to come up with operational procedures that minimize those risks.
Is there any risk analysis going on right now?
Not that I am aware of. I mean, it's pretty simple when you think about experimental aircraft and about people that are learning to fly and people that are flying for the first time by themselves. Obviously, everybody can probably agree that those are the higher risk operations. Now, there might be other high risk operations that we could identify that we might also want to address. But clearly, I mean, look at McCarran, look at the high quality of pilots. They're very, very highly trained that come in on the commercial aircraft, hundreds of thousands of operations every year, and essentially no problem. So we need to look at all types of operations, and we need to balance the risk. We also need to look at how you mix aircraft, what kind of aircraft you mix. In my opinion, mixing very, very small aircraft at a very, very busy airport like McCarran with very heavy aircraft is probably not what we would want to do if we had our choice, both from a safety and from an efficiency standpoint. Now, we never had any problems at McCarran, so somebody could say, well, why would you address it if you haven't actually had any issues? I think you do a risk analysis, and then you try to do what you can do to minimize the risk so that you don't have any issues at any of our airports if possible.
Why don't you just do that?
Because I can't.
I mean, risk analysis.
Oh, risk analysis? We could certainly do that. I think it would be much bigger than an individual airport operator. I think that's something that needs to be done at the national level. We would certainly agree to participate to whatever extent we would be allowed, because I think this is an important issue. But quite honestly, anything that we would do would probably not have any validity from a national standpoint. So this is much bigger than just us. But I think what happened today shows, I think, a need to actually have those kind of discussions and those kind of analysis on a national basis.
I got one for North Las Vegas. The incident today, were you guys the first who came onto the scene?
Yes, our units were there within 2 minutes to the scene. Officers actually tried to get into the house, but because of the heat, were unable to.
And did you know how many people were inside? Did you know what you were facing? Obviously, you saw the fire, but did you know who was involved? How many people?
At the time of the report, no, we did not. Based on the time of the day, though, and the fact that there was a vehicle there, we, anticipated that there would be people inside the home.
Has any information been released yet about who the pilot is, who the people are?
No, we have not done that yet.
And is it still true, Randy, that there's no aircraft rescue or firefighting equipment or personnel on site here at the airport?
That is correct. We have a relationship with the North Las Vegas Airport here, as we do with the Henderson Airport. In the Henderson Airport, the only airport in which we have our own firefighting crew and equipment is McCarran.
Any idea how many of these experimental aircraft you have flying in and around the area on a daily basis?
I do not have a specific number. We could probably get an idea of how many based aircraft we have here, how many would fly from another location to here. We would not keep those statistics ourselves. Do you know how many are based here, Doug?
Not many, Randy, but I don't have a number.
Okay, not very many, but we'll try to see if we can get a better number for that. We do have a number of companies that provide pilot training here at North Las Vegas, two or three of them here, and that's one of the other issues that I identified. So I'm sure there are others, but just off the top of my head, I picked the ones that were the easiest to understand, I think.
Where was this particular aircraft based, do you know?
The owner, I believe, is a customer here at North Las Vegas. Up to now, this aircraft had not operated at North Las Vegas. Since it only has 5 hours of flight time, I'm not and it's flown out of 3 different airports, I'm not sure that we'd understand where the base is, but
You said it was a Gene.
my understanding is they had this aircraft had operated before at Boulder City and at Gene. It obviously landed here at North Las Vegas to get here, but my understanding is this is the first time it had taken off from North Las Vegas. Is that correct, Doug?
And Henderson, you said?
No, not at Henderson. Gene and Boulder City and now North Las Vegas.
How many accidents have they been reported here in North Vegas?
Well, this series of an accident, this is the first one that I'm aware of in my almost 18 years of being associated with the airport. We've had other accidents. We've had planes land in the street and vacant lots. I think we had one crash into the backyard of a home, but there were no fatalities. So clearly this is the worst accident off of one of our general aviation airports that I'm aware of in my nearly 18 years.
Was there that Christmas Day crash in 2003 where 6 people died?
But where was that?
That was here on the airport.
Oh, that was here on the airfield. I'm talking about off the airport in terms of the community itself. Okay.
Can we go back to fire real quick and just a question for fire as far as what your firefighters faced challenge-wise when they got there? I know the doors were locked and they had to try and get in. Where did they find the people located, whether in the bedroom, the kitchen? Can you discuss that?
Well, we're not prepared to release where the victims may have been found, but I can tell you that they had an intense fire situation because of the aviation fuel and the fuel from the products within the home. They did an excellent job, forced their way like they would normally do for a structure fire, and began suppressing the fire and searching for victims as quickly as they could.
Any more questions?
I have one more. Are you going to go to other airport directors now and say, hey, let's lobby Congress and do some risk analysis and try and limit the aircraft that are coming in and out of certain airports?
Well, actually, I'll have the opportunity to do that next month. We have our annual airport meeting with our Airport Council International North America and actually the World Organization in Boston next month. As the chair of the executive committee, I will have some opportunity to bring up issues at my discretion, and so will certainly be discussed at our executive committee and at our board of directors meeting in advance of the conference. And so, yes, we will have the opportunity to discuss this. I will tell you, it's not the first time we've discussed it, but certainly this will be an opportunity to raise the issue yet once again.
You're going to be kind of picking a fight with pilots.
Well, I'm not trying to pick a fight with anybody. What I'm trying to do is to address a regulatory scheme which I think needs to be re-looked at in terms of balancing the benefits to everybody.
I have a quick question. Anything changing here at the airport today as you, I guess, start a preliminary investigation, or is it kind of business as usual for right now?
No, nothing's really changed. This accident was not a result of any issue that was at the airport itself. So if there were an issue with one of our runways, with some physical property here at the airport, we would certainly address that, and we would eliminate any traffic that had to use that immediately. That is not the case, so there would be no reason to do that. So all the other traffic could continue to operate as normal. Thank you very much. Or if there's one more question, we'll take that, but otherwise,
Would you say,
we'll wrap it
Randy,
up.
because it's too early in the investigation, should we be, a lot of people want to point the finger at experimental aircraft, like small airplanes in general, Cessnas, whatever you want all the time. Is the majority of the time pilot error? And I know you guys maybe have heard the tape. I know he radioed in the tower. We had some initial reports about, radioing ahead of time and said he was going down and was having trouble. Is it too early to start pointing the finger at experimental airplanes, or say right now it looks like pilot error?
Well, I don't think in this case we'll know until the NSTB has done with their investigation. All I'm saying is if you look at the risk factor, certainly experimental aircraft have to be a higher risk than non-experimental aircraft. Pilots that have a lot of experience certainly have to be a lower risk than a pilot who's soloing an airplane for the first time. That just is logical. Now, what's in between that, that's what you would probably do is if you did an exhaustive analysis of balancing that risk out. I'm just picking off the ones that I think are pretty logical to look at. What else might be looked at in that would, be something that somebody would have to look at. But we have a lot of very experienced, very professional, excellent pilots that operate out of all of our airports, and that's not what I'm talking about.
Can you talk about the aircraft?
Thank you very much.
And that is the news conference at the North Las Vegas Airport given by Randy Walker, the head of aviation for Clark County. Walker responding to the plane crash this morning near the North Las Vegas Airport that killed 3 people. A small experimental plane apparently crashed into a home, killing again 3 people. No names of the victims have been released at this point. This is video this morning from Sky Witness 8. You are watching video. This happened, by the way, just after about 6:30 this morning, and that Sky Witness 8 is coming upon the scene there right after that happened. The plane in question was what's called a Velocity 173 RG. It's an experimental aircraft that can actually be assembled from a kit. This is a picture of the plane right there. It's a rear propeller aircraft. And again, witnesses say it appeared to have crashed through the living room of that home in North Las Vegas. FAA records say that this aircraft was certified for flight in 2002. It was owned by a Las Vegas resident, but according to Walker, the pilot was not the owner. Again, no names have been released this morning. Walker this morning putting out a call to Washington to give him more authority to better manage which aircraft use which airports here in the valley. He's very upset this morning that basically you can have an experimental aircraft take off in a densely populated area like that. He says that an aircraft like that has a better home, for example, at one of our rural airports, for example, the one down in Jean. Anyway, to recap again, 3 people dead after a crash this morning around 6:30 this morning by the North Las Vegas Airport. For continuing coverage, make sure you stay tuned to Channel 8 Eyewitness News coming up at noon, and of course here on Las Vegas 1 News 1 at 9. I'm Jeff Gillen. You're watching Las Vegas 1.